Alrighty, hello. We're going to talk about evolution. We're moving on to our next unit, Unit 5, talking about evolution. How do changes in the environment lead to changes in populations? Alright, so a quick review. What is evolution? What is evolution? It is a change in the species over a long period of time. So basically, it's just a change in some type of species over a long period of time. Alright. Newer species form from older species, saying that they come from a common ancestor. So newer species form from older species. All right, natural selection. It's when changes in an environment can cause changes in populations. Okay, we all are organisms that live in an environment. You live in your city where you have a certain type of temperature. You have, other animals that are there. You have shelter, you have food, you have different resources that are there, and you pretty much depend on those things to keep your population or keep your species going. All right, now there are some changes that can happen in an environment that would definitely affect the population. If you have a natural disaster, or if you have like disease that spreads, or if you have a decrease in resources. You have only a little bit of mates that you can mate with, or if you have less food, or if you have less shelter, then you have to kind of compete for those things, right? So populations produce more offspring than the environment can support or carry. The reason populations produce more offspring is because there are several things that will, that can stop or prohibit offsprings from growing up, like predators. A bird will have 8 eggs instead of just having one and spending all of her time and energy on one egg, because if she has that one egg, she goes out and gets some food and a hawk comes and eats that egg. Now all of her energy and time has been spent on that one egg. The egg's dead and gone now. But if she has 8, she goes away, the hawk might come eat 5, but she still has 3 left that can grow up, be strong, and carry on those genes and carry on the species. All right, a population, simple definition for a population, is a group of organisms of one species that live in the same place at the same time, and they have the ability to interbreed or to reproduce with each other. Again, population is a group of organisms that are the same species that live in the same area at the same time and can interbreed or reproduce with each other. Members of the same population compete with another for food, water, shelter, and mates. So if you're in the same population, you're pretty much competing with the other person, or you're sharing with the other person the food, the shelter, the mate, that whole area that you're in. When an environment cannot support the overproduction of offspring, this leads to a competition or a struggle with only a portion of offspring surviving. So basically it's a struggle for existence when there are limited resources like limited space, limited food, limited water, things like that, or limited mates, so you can reproduce with. It's pretty much is going to be the survival of the fittest. The survival of the fittest. There's going to be struggle, competition, and the strongest ones will be able to survive and reproduce. If you look at the picture down there, those are a lot of different people. They have, it's a lot of different people. Long story short, there's a lot of diversity in that picture. Okay, there's a great variation, which is diversity, among individuals in a population. We all look different, act different, things like that. The individuals that are best adapted, or best suited, or best equipped to that environment will survive and reproduce more offspring. Okay, I gave several examples in class about this, but long story short, the better equipped you are for your environment, the easier it is for you to survive and reproduce. Who attempted to explain evolution? We talked about Charles Darwin. He's a scientist. Charles Darwin. He's a scientist. He's considered to be like the founder of modern evolutionary theory. Long story short, he went on a 5-year voyage on the HMS Beagle. That was a ship. Went on a 5-year voyage, and he went around the world, but he spent a lot of time in the Galapagos Islands. And what he found pretty much in the Galapagos Islands was that there were several different types of animals. For example, finches or tortoises on the right. the finches that were in the mainland, the finches looked a certain way, and they had a certain beak type. All right, and beak might look like this organism right here. But then when he went to each different island, he noticed that the finches looked similar to the ones on the mainland, but they had different beaks, like that beak, or like this beak, or like that. Different types of beaks, same type of bird, but different types of beaks. And he wondered what was going on. Why were there different variations of this bird on these different separate islands? And he found out that the ones that were on an island that had mostly nuts, and nuts as far as their resource, their type of food, had beaks similar to these right here. A strong, small, bulky beak, so you could break hard nuts. Okay, ones that had a high population of insects, and the insects were the type of food that the finches ate. They had beaks like this. And other ones ate fruits and berries and things like that. But depending on the food that was available in that environment, those are the finches that were better adapted, or better suited, or better equipped to live in that area. So they would live, survive, and reproduce more. So basically what it's saying, natural selection, the whole basic idea of natural selection is that the actual environment pretty much decides what characteristics are most advantageous or most beneficial to have in that environment. So that's the whole thing about natural selection. So if you're in an environment where the major food source are insects, then it pays to have a long, thin beak, because then you can stick your beak into trees and pull out insects, or you can stick your beaks into the soil and pull out insects. But if you have a real small, short, narrow beak, you're not going to be able to go into those places and get food. Therefore, it's going to be harder for you to find food, survive, and reproduce. You more than likely would die off and become extinct. All right, that's natural selection in a nutshell. You can see that when Darwin developed the theory of natural selection, which is a process by which organisms with favorable variations for a particular environment survive, reproduce, and pass these variations on to the next generation. Adaptations can lead to evolution. A quick review. What is an adaptation? An adaptation is a special trait or behavior that helps an organism survive better in its environment. Okay, like you see the little frog down there, that frog will probably survive very well in this environment because it kind of blends in. Okay, if that same frog that looked just like that was in the North Pole and was surrounded by white snow, he would stand out a whole lot more, right? So more predators would eat him. It'd be harder for him to hunt for food. So if he's in this environment, like on the picture right now, he blends in very well. It'd be hard for a predator to find him, and it'd be hard for his prey to discover he's there before he can eat them. So he would be very adapted very well, or suited or equipped well for that kind of environment, but not suited as well for an environment like in the tundra or in the North Pole, where there's a lot of snow everywhere and everything is white. All right. What determines the rate at which a species evolves? An unequal ability of individuals to survive and reproduce leads to a gradual change in a population. All right. Evolution is a gradual change in a population over many generations. The more quickly a species reproduces, the more quickly it can evolve. All right. That's about it. That's natural selection.